Cleaned everything up, tried to put it on, it's just not fitting, and I've got to that point where I was like, well, how has this happened? Has the supplier sent me the wrong belts? Unfortunately, it turns out that there is a later cylinder head on the 748. I think it said it was 2002 that actually required the 93 tooth belt. So I now have to either leave these in the garage indefinitely or try and return them. But it was a couple of months ago that I bought them. So I think the best solution moving forward is just going to be to buy a set of genuine Cambelt. So for those of you that watched the last video, I unfortunately purchased a set of Cambelts for the last generation 748, which unfortunately had 2 teeth left. So £102 on the trade discount for 2 genuine Ducati Cambelts. So let's see if we can get it on and running in today's video for you guys. So as you can see, the upper cylinder cam belt is now on. Now I haven't done the belt tension yet. I've just loosely put it in place and just put a bit of tension on there just so I can keep it all in place, because we want to rotate the engine and work all the slack out. But essentially, as you can see here, where my nail is, that line lines up with that little line there. And then same on the other cylinder. You can see that line with that line there. Crank is in position, and then as we mentioned, go around the other side, and you can still see we're on point there. So that's the upper cylinder done. I'll now put the belt on the lower one. So now with both belts refitted, it's all timed up correctly, but the tension hasn't been set. Now the general rule is you'll rotate the engine a few times just by hand, spinning the rear wheel, take all the slack out of the belts, and then you put it back to the position and correctly set the tension. So that is what we're going to do now. So I've just put a little bit of tension in the tensioner pulleys just to take any of the slack out initially so it doesn't jump or move. And because you're just rotating it by hand, the odds of you doing any damage, especially if you stop when you feel it stop, would be absolutely fine. But I'm confident everything's timed up. There's tension in the belts, they're all in the correct position. So let's give it a few rotations. Now with the belts all on, we've done our dry rotation just by hand. Everything's rotated fine. All the timing marks have come back exactly where they need to be. Now setting the tension is slightly different for each cylinder. Well, the process is the same, but you need to rotate the engine 270 degrees to do the vertical. Now just as an example, so far this looks okay. Again, we'll check it when we rotate the engine, but there's a few tips. One of them is using a genuine Ducati belt tensioner. Very expensive. Most people like myself won't have access to them. And then there's the 5mm Allen key trick, which has been going around 4 years. So 5mm Allen key under the top of the cover in the belt, you can see it fits, no strain. So that would imply it's okay. You can then lift the belt moderate force, and you see it's perfect. Now if I go down to a lower cylinder, which we're going to do, 5mm Allen key doesn't fit without force, and the belt goes way past, so we need to set the tension, which we'll do on that now. And again, you just undo this pulley, count anti-clockwise rotation. Once it's in position, you then lock it up and your tension should be spot on. And so what I'll do is, once I've done it all, I'm happy with the tension, I'll actually do another rotation just to make sure it's absolutely perfect. As I say, the last thing we want, especially for another 10 minutes, is this failing. So now round at the sight glass, you rotate the engine roughly 270 degrees and you'll come up with another dot. Now on this one, nothing lines up anymore, but we're not doing it for alignment. It's just to make sure that there's none of the tension in the sprockets when obviously you do the tension on the vertical cylinder, which we'll do now. And then I'll rotate it all again by hand, line it back up, make sure everything feels good on the tension, and it'll just be a case of putting it back together, doing the oil service and firing it up. So finally, vertical cylinder, as I mentioned, 5mm Allen key, should go straight in there, which it does. You're looking with moderate tension just to see it at the top of the cover there, which is spot on. And again, because you haven't got the official belt tensioner, this is as good as it's going to get. I'm happy with it all. I've set the tension, I've already torque wrenched it using my crow's foot because the space in there, as you can see, isn't great. And again, just for peace of mind, I'll do a full rotation and just check everything's lined up and that I'm happy with the tension on the belts. And then we can start putting it back together, drop the oil, because that hasn't been moved for 3 years. Brand new tank of V-Power there to go in, and then it will just be a case of firing it up. One final thing I will add, which I'm not sure if I mentioned in the earlier video, is when you tension the belts, you must do them anti-clockwise on the tensions. If you go clockwise, it moves the pulley that way and they actually catch on the belts. And as you can see, there's not a great deal of room between them anyway. So make sure you do the tension as anti-clockwise, and like I say, then torque everything up. Check the tension, I've just rotated it all again. Everything is all lined up, so we're ready to go. So with the bike going back together, Cambelt covers all back in place, and as I start putting the tank back on, the seat unit, new tank of fuel. But something else we're going to do is an oil change. So it almost looks like I've overfilled it there, but it is actually where the engine hasn't been run for about 3 years. So obviously everything has drained from the cylinders right down. Now on the 748, you've got your oil filter, which we'll put a new one in. You've got your sump plug, and there's also a secondary like oil strainer on there. So we'll be taking that out today and giving that a clean as well. So I've given the strainer a quick clean up. Pleased to report there was no filings or anything on the magnetic sump washer either. 2 new washers to go in there, and like I say, we can then fill everything up with oil. I have put the new oil filter in. Unfortunately, I forgot to film that, but it is all in place, as you'll see shortly. So we just need to fill the system up. I'm going to put about 3 litres in, see where we sit on the dipstick, and or sight glass even. And I'm going to do a dry rotate anyway, just to sort of fire everything up and make sure the oils will lubricate before we actually get it running. So I run 10W40 fully synthetic oil, pretty good stuff from Silcoline. Unfortunately, they have now gone to these eco bags, and don't get me wrong, I'm all for saving the environment, but they are shite. And it now means you haven't got an old tub really to drain it in. I mean, you could try and pour it back in there, but that's going to make a mess in it. So anyway, 3 and a bit litres to go in, have a look at the sight glass, and then top up. It's probably going to be about 3.3 to 3.5. Can't really remember, to be honest with you, but I was referring back to the manual. So with the oil level set to the maximum, obviously that is going to drop once the bike fires up. I have rigged up my RC8 battery to it. Should be more than suitable for cranking this. Obviously I'm not going out on the road like this. It's just to fire the bike up. So whilst it's apart and there's obviously no fuel tank, the fuel lines are drained, I'm just going to give it a dry crank over just to get oil pressure up, because like I say, it has been a couple of years since it started. So as you can see, the bike is running, and unfortunately back apart again after firing it, leaving it running for a second. I saw a small drip of fuel, turned it off, lifted the tank back up, and the O-ring unfortunately has gone on that white line. So I'm going to need to order some proper O-rings. I've checked my kit that I've got, but they're not petrol resistant O-rings, they're oil ones. So you want to make sure you've got the right ones. I mean, it's pretty old. Try and zoom in on it. You can see as it's come out, it's all just crippled and broken apart where it's all perished. So a little bit disappointing, but old bike life, unfortunately. Like I say, we'll next one we'll be getting it back together, and obviously hopefully have them O-rings on there, and I can sort the tail unit out as well, because I've still got the R&G tail tidy on there. I want to put the standard one back on with the original indicators to match the front and everything. So back in the garage, as we discussed just at that last clip, I'll have obviously included in the video, I have got the 4 O-rings. Well, I only actually need 2, the kit came with 4, but the idea is these are oil and petrol resistant. So something you need to be careful of is if you do use normal generic O-ring kits, they're only suitable for oil normally, so they do need to be petrol resistant as well. I've also refitted the standard tail as well. Got to get the number plate on there, remove the R&G one. I liked the R&G one at first, but you know what? It just wants to be more original, which is what it is. So yeah, in this video, we'll be putting it back together. So full tank of fuel, all plumbed back in. Let's try that again. So that wraps up episode 4. Thankfully, everything working as hoped with the little 748 SP. Next episode, we'll be doing the coolant flush, going to do the brake fluid change as well, and then just a general going over with things like the brakes. But pleased to report, it's all coming back together, and then it'll be on to MOT. So if you did enjoy the video, make sure you like and subscribe. Until the next one, thanks for watching.